Okay, good evening. We've already done the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag in our earlier meeting. This is the Town of East Lyme Board of Selectmen notice of public hearing regarding the revision to the ordinance, Chapter 112, entitled Peddling. And let me read this. Notice is hereby given of a public hearing to be held by the East Lyme Board of Selectmen at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, at the East Lyme Town Hall, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, to consider revisions to the ordinance entitled Peddling. The proposed revision transfers the application and licensing responsibilities from the first selectman to the chief of police. Copies of the full text of the proposed ordinance are on file for public inspection at the office of the town clerk, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, to which reference may be had. Interested persons are invited to attend and be heard, dated at East Lyme, Connecticut. This was on the 7th day of February, 2024. So, here we are. Is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Selectmen on this matter? Is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Selectmen on this matter? Is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Selectmen on this matter? Being none, I'd look for a motion to close the public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All right, those in favor? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. The hearing is closed. So let me gavel in the next one. Good evening, Town of East Lyme, Board of Selectmen. Notice of public hearing regarding a revision to the ordinance entitled Board of Police Commissioners. Notice is hereby given of a public hearing to be held by the East Lyme Board of Selectmen at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, February 21st, 2024 at the East Lyme Town Hall, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, to consider a revision to the ordinance entitled Board of Police Commissioners. The proposed revision eliminates Section 32.16 uppercase B, which provides that no member may serve more than 2 consecutive terms, and that a member who has served 2 consecutive terms may not be reappointed to the board until 4 years have elapsed from the conclusion of his or her most recent term. Copies of the full text of the proposed ordinance are on file for public inspection at the office of the East Lyme Town Clerk, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, and to which reference may be had. Interested parties are invited to attend and be heard. This was dated at East Lyme, Connecticut on the 7th day of February, 2024. So good evening. Is there anyone that would like to comment and address the Board of Selectmen on this matter? Is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Selectmen regarding this matter? Is there anyone that would like to address the Board of Selectmen regarding this matter? Seeing none and being none, I ask for a motion to close the hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, motion carries. The hearing is closed. Gavel us in here. All right, good evening. This is the East Lyme Board of Selectmen regular meeting of February 21st, 2024. We're in the East Lyme Town Hall upper meeting room. We've already recited the Pledge of Allegiance earlier tonight in our earlier meeting. So we will turn right to additional agenda and consent calendar items. Do we have any agenda adjustments?
Yes, so I'd like to make a motion to take under new business number C, which is update from the short-term rental committee, and just move it down to after G instead.
All right. Do I hear a second? I'll second it, that movement in the agenda. All in favor? Say aye if you're in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we're just going to move C down to below G. All right, of course. Now we have the consent calendar. And let's see.
Move to approve the consent calendar for February 21st, 2024 in the amount of $32,557.67.
The Yeah, let's see, can't find it. Where is it? I just have it.
It's right here. Here.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. So, all right, there are a couple of large items. There's two, L&L East Lyme LLC. Apparently there was an overpayment, and it was by a court stipulation that they be refunded those amounts. Those are the only ones that probably attract any attention, but that must have been from a court order, so that's why we're doing it. I don't have much more information than that about it. Those in favor of... Go ahead.
We're on the consent calendar, right?
Yeah.
On the consent-
Okay, just
Yeah,
checking. I
just
heard
the
you say
consent.
funds, and I'm like, where are we right now?
Yeah, consent.
Okay.
I'll
Yep.
second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor of approving the consent calendar, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, none opposed, it carries.
I'm sorry. Did we skip delegations and
No,
No, we're
no,
doing that next.
that's going to be next. Yep. So, next on the agenda is public delegations. Is there anyone that would, in the public tonight, that would like to address the Board of Selectmen? Okay, being done, we'll move on. Next, item 1D, approval of the minutes, the regular meeting of February 7th, 2004.
Move to approve the special meeting minutes of February 7th, 2024 is submitted.
I'll second.
Is there any, it was the regular meeting, right? Minutes?
Yeah.
Not special
Oh,
meeting?
it's a, yeah.
The regular
Regular
minutes.
meeting,
Yeah,
Oh, it's a
exactly.
regular meeting.
Yes. So, yeah, I had a change. Hold on, I'm just gonna find it now. Okay, on page 7, under, it says Roseanne Hardy reported on the following, like 3/4 of the way down. It says, under the second bullet, it says, on how to advocate for, and it says conversation and preservation. I think it should be conservation.
Yes.
Okay.
Right here. So instead of conversation, it
Oh,
should
yeah,
be
conservation.
conservation.
Oh, good catch.
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right, so we will, we'll adopt that change. Any objection to adopting that change?
No.
All right. So with that, any further discussion on acceptance of the minutes? Being none, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to approve it's the regular meeting minutes of February 7th, 2024 with the changes as submitted,
I'll
with the
second.
amended changes.
All right. And do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Do I have a second? All right, all in favor of accepting the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, it's approved. Well, Jason was right. We did the consent calendar out of sequence here. I didn't realize, I saw consent calendar up above, and,
just want to give that money away?
yeah. Okay, so we've already done that. We're ahead of schedule, and here we go. What a job. Okay, we're on to section 2, new business. And this is introduction and discussion, grant fund ordinance, and to schedule a public hearing. So with that, we have a copy of the grant fund ordinance as part of the packet. And really, what it does, it creates a placeholder, a central place to receive funds that we receive from grants, and it can be held in an account, and then it can be tracked by the Director of Finance and accounted for as the money. So it'll be one fund where all the various grants go into. It'll be a pool, and then as the money comes out, it'll be tracked and making sure it's applied to the correct winner of the grant, or owner of the grant, however you want to put it, and under the supervision of our Finance Director. That's basically.
So you're saying all the money goes into one
So it would be,
account?
I believe so, it would be a grants fund. So let me just read the preamble here. So there is established within the East Lyme General Fund a grants fund. The grants fund shall continue year to year without lapsing unless terminated by the Board of Selectmen. So it will be within the general fund, it'll be a separate fund. And the purpose of the grant fund is to hold the funds received by the town in a central location in order to facilitate, the accurate tracking and accounting of the funds. Provide more transparency, easier accounting, and it's really, I think, the right way to do it.
So, in other words, if this is a grant that we normally get every year without having to reapply every year, that would just automatically be continue. But if it's a new grant that's coming in that we haven't received before, that would still have to go through the application and acceptance.
Yes, this doesn't, I don't think this, there are other controls on grants that we've talked about before, where if it's a grant that might expand the budget in future years, how we have to go before the Board of Finance, and, we've talked about in the earlier meetings what the new requirements are. But this is once we have the grant, and there's a check coming into the town of East Lyme, how do we track it? How do we account for it? So it would create a separate fund within the general fund that would track these grants, and the funds would be pooled into this grant fund and then dispersed from that fund and tracked by the finance director. So to make sure the correct entity is getting the funds that are
Okay, so they would be pooled, but each grant would be listed individually.
I'm going to show you guys in 1 second. My computer just won't work with me.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Dan, I do have a question while we're waiting for Kevin to
Yeah.
pull that up. Is this just town grants, or is this going to be, say, if a Park and Rec does a grant or the Board of Ed does a grant, that's not going to encompass them? This is just town grants.
So it says, well, town of East Lyme. So I believe that even, I believe that even if it's the Parks and Rec.
So
they-
all
they'll go
town
to-
funds
right.
except Board of Ed. So Board of Ed
Board of
already
Ed
have their own
does.
grant funds. Board of Ed have a state and federal grant fund already.
Mm-hmm.
This would just be the town grant. So let me make sure this works. Perfect, it does. Okay.
So the Board of Ed is its own separate entity.
Correct.
So
So
this is why
everything
I
else.
just wanted clarification,
No,
and then I
no,
have
no,
a couple
it's a
of
great
more.
question.
they do all their own grants, and,
Yeah.
and so this is on the town side. So, so I came from the town of Brookfield before this. This is what the finance director in Brookfield created in their financial statements that I'm hoping to bring here to East Lyme. So this is the town of Brookfield's grant fund. So you can see every grant, we have very similar grants. Some of these grants we actually have, the MERS, the town clerk MERS grant, Dollar Fund, Historic Preservation. You go down, we get some of those police grants as well. But if you look at the accounting here, there's a project code. You have a beginning fund balance for each grant. So nothing is pooled, and every grant can't be overexpended, right? So every grant has its own fund balance. The idea is here, if we see, someone years ago gave money for the police to adopt canines. I just know off the top of my head, a dog died, they bought a new dog. So they used $10,470 of that money. The $15,000 rolls over in perpetuity, right? Because that is what this money is set aside for, right? So our grant fund should have one of these schedules. Our CNRE, which is the cash non-recurring, the cash capital, and our bonded funds should have these. We do not have any of these funds currently in our financial statements.
Actually, I like the transparency of this.
It's
I
as
love
transparent
this.
as you can
yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like this.
So one other question though, so.
These are not our grants, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's fine,
So,
doesn't
just-
matter. So just looking, let's say, all right, we have similar grants, okay?
Mhm.
Are they all in one account then, is what you're saying? Even though
So,
like
this is
you're
in
splitting
one
out
fund.
all the money, right?
So really what this schedule is, right, everyone's going to get an accounting lesson today. This is, so every fund has a fund balance. We were talking earlier, like Park and Rec has a fund balance.
Yeah.
So this is accounting for the changes in the fund balance. So let me just go to the bottom here. So this grant fund, all this money, they started the year with $105,000 of funds that they know were committed to certain grants but weren't spent, right? So right here is streetscape public art donations. Started with $1,000. We didn't spend anything. We didn't bring anything in. It's still $1,000. How do we account for that? This is the fund balance for that fund, $169,000. Every penny in the grant fund is accounted for. The grant fund, if a fund is closed, we either reimburse the the person who gave us the grant, the leftover money, or we transfer into the general fund at the end of the year. So if you pulled up, these are the financial statements. Right there, this fund has a fund balance of $169,095. It ties perfectly to each grant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm still confused. So is it like one account like in the bank, or is it all these different accounts for each grant or something?
So
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't want to confuse you further. Every fund doesn't have to have its own bank account because you can have inter-fund due-to-due flows between them. But for your question, I will say this fund has one bank account.
Okay.
Right, so all this money is pooled into one bank account.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I was getting at.
It's a hierarchy, is one way to describe it. And this is
Yeah,
like
a roll-up.
This is like the top of the pyramid, and then underneath it you have all these various accounts. It doesn't mean it's in a specific bank account somewhere, but conceptually, it's a fund. It's an identifiable group
Yep.
of inputs into this fund. And then through the detail, you can identify each grant that was contributed to the fund and its current status, what's been paid out, what's left over. So at any point, you can see the detail.
Got it.
But the fund is really a conceptual idea. It doesn't necessarily mean it's in a special checking account.
Got it.
And do I have that right? Is that pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
the way?
I lost you on
way
the last
to describe
bit
it?
there. I got
What?
distracted, but I said I
No,
lost you on
that's
the second sentence there.
We're all good. We're all good.
Yeah,
now.
I think it'll be good. I just poor Marcia, the finance director in Brookfield. I named most of these, and there's no rhyme or reason to any of them. It was my ADD kicking in. So going forward, when we do this here, 0001, 0002, and that's how we'll go forward with the grant numbering. But
Okay, so the purpose of this really was to have more
Accounting, better accounting.
like better accounting, better transparency,
Transparency.
see where things are going, and
So right now, currently, before we adopt this,
Mm-hmm.
every grant we get in town, we don't have a grant fund, right?
Mm-hmm.
So really what happens is, say we get a grant for $6,000 for whatever, widgets. We only spend $3,000 on those widgets in this year.
Mm-hmm.
The town is budgeted annually. So next year, if we want to spend the remaining $3,000, so the department that's controlling that $3,000 should go before you again and ask for an additional appropriation for that $3,000. Right? It's just not how we should. There's certain things we can budget for multi-year, and this is one of them. So this is just bringing us up to speed with, current accounting policies.
Okay. I like it.
I think it's a move in the right direction of
Yes,
clarity and transparency and accountability. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, any further discussion on the concept of the grant fund or pros and cons? Being none, then can we hear an ordinance? I mean, a motion for a public hearing.
Okay. Move the following. Notice is hereby given of a public hearing to be held by the East Lyme Board of Selectmen at 7 p.m. on March 6, 2024, at the East Lyme Town Hall, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, to consider the adoption of the following ordinance. Establishment of a grants fund. 1. There is established within the East Lyme General Fund a, quote, grants fund. The grants fund shall continue year to year without lapsing unless terminated by the Board of Selectmen. 2. The purpose of the grants fund is to hold grant funds received by the town of East Lyme in a central location in order to facilitate efficient and accurate tracking and accounting of said funds, and to enable the finance director to more readily and efficiently report on the status and use of grant funds to the sources of those funds when required by law or the terms of a particular grant. 3. The finance director, under the supervision and direction of the Board of Finance, shall have custody of the grants fund. Further, the finance director shall, A, upon the receipt of grant funds by the town of East Lyme, deposit or otherwise place said funds into the grants fund, unless said funds are required by law or the terms of a particular grant to be deposited elsewhere. B, disperse funds from the grants fund for purposes authorized by law and the terms of the source grant for the funds dispersed. C, account for the status and use of said funds within the grants fund. D, prepare reports for grant providers as required by law or the terms of the source grant concerning the status and use of grant funds. Whenever such reports are prepared, a copy shall be sent to the Board of Finance for information purposes as part of the Board of Finance's supervision and direction of the Finance Director's management of the grants fund. 4, annually on or before September 30th, the Finance Director shall submit a report to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance providing a summary of the grants fund for the fiscal year most recently ending. Such summary shall identify the total amount of grant funds received by the town of East Lyme, list the sources of those funds, identify the total amount of grant funds carried into the new fiscal year, and any such other information as the finance director, in his or her discretion, deems necessary and appropriate. Copies of the text of this notice is on file for public inspection at the office of the East Lyme Town Clerk, 108 Pennsylvania Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, and at www.eltownhall.com, to which reference may be had. Interested persons are invited to attend and be heard. Dated at East Lyme, Connecticut, on this 21st day of February 2024.
Thank you, Ann. That was long and tedious. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Or
second.
is there any further discussion, first of all? Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I have a second. All right, those in favor of scheduling the public hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Being none, motion carries. All right. So, the presentation on the feasibility, on the community center feasibility study, that's going to be tabled to a later date. They weren't quite ready to present tonight, so we'll have to wait on that one. We did move the short-term rental committee report to at the bottom of this section of the agenda. So the next item is item D, schedule town meeting, Commission on Aging, the ARPA grant for senior center, $58,540. Okay with doing that? You
Yeah,
good?
yeah, sure.
All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Notice is hereby given of a special town meeting of the town of East Lyme to be held on Wednesday, March 6, 2024 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the East Lyme Town Hall, upper meeting room for the following purposes. 1. To approve a special appropriation of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, grant funds from the State of Connecticut Department of Aging and Disability Services Coronavirus Fiscal Local Recovery Fund, CSLFRF, of $58,540 to benefit the East Lyme Senior Center for the following. For programming including a partially funded social worker through 12/31/24, purchase and installation / setup of a user registration station, purchase and installation of a clothes washer and dryer and supplies, purchase and installation of new freezer, dishwasher, and associated supplies is set forth in the project budget as identified below. Project budget. Okay. Cost items. Compensation. The programming total cost for 10/1/23 to 9/30/24 is $15,356.25. The fringe benefits for 10/1/23 to 9/30/24 is $5,406.50. The travel is $78.60. Equipment and other capital is $13,406.85. Materials and supplies is $250. Contractual services is $2,650. Telecommunications is $150. Total direct cost is $37,298.65. So that's a programming total cost for 10/1/23 to 9/30/24. Looking at the programming total cost from 10/1/24 to 9/30/25, compensation is $15,256.25. Fringe benefits are $5,406.50. Travel is $78.60. Materials and supplies is $250. Telecommunications is $150. Total direct cost is $21,241.35. So the total project budget then comes up to the $58,540. And 2 is to transact any other business proper to come before the meeting dated at East Lyme, Connecticut, this 21st day of February 2024.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Being none, those in favor of scheduling the town meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Being none, the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is approval of the annual lease for Lions Art. I think that is going to be I think this is for the Lions Club during the was it July 6th, July 7th weekend. Pretty standard. I think we approve this every year. I don't believe there's been any significant changes other than the dates. I don't know if there's any discussion that we should have about it. If there isn't, I would entertain a motion to approve it.
Lions Club annual lease. Move to approve and to authorize the first selectman to enter into a lease agreement with the Niantic Lions Club for the purpose of selling food in connection with the art show on July 6th and 7th, 2024. The town grants to the Lions for the period of 4 p.m. on Friday, July 5th, and shall end at 10 p.m. on Sunday, July 7th. The right to use the land at the town hall on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is to be set aside for that purpose by the town.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second?
All right. Any further discussion? This is pretty standard. We do it every year. All right. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There being none, motion carries. And the Lions can do what they do during that weekend. Appointments to boards and commissions. All right. What do we have for
We've got 3.
that? Okay.
Okay, appointments. Move to appoint Kristen Karamonica, Senior Center Director, to serve as a municipal agent for the elderly on behalf of the town of East Lyme, with a term to expire on January 3rd, 2028.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Being none, motion carries.
Move to appoint Kevin McGowan of 33 Spinnaker Drive, Niantic, Connecticut, to serve as a member on the Commission on Aging on behalf of the town of East Lyme, with a term to expire on January 3rd, 2028.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
All right. Any discussion?
Mr. McGowan has attended several of the most recent commission meetings and is very interested in being appointed, as well as being also involved with the commission.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Being none, motion carries.
Move to appoint Patricia Kolosowski, 52 Indianola Road, Niantic, Connecticut, to serve as an alternate member on the Zoning Board of Appeals on behalf of the town of East Lyme, with a term to expire on January 3rd, 2028.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Don. Any further discussion? Being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Being none, the motion carries. I think is that it? I believe that's it for boards and commissions.
Go back up.
Okay, so now we're going to go back up and we'll receive a report on the short-term rental committee.
Welcome.
Good evening, hi. Ann Santoro here and Gary Cocello here.
Good evening.
Yeah, we're the co-chairs of the short-term rental committee, which, as you know, is an advisory committee of your board. We're here tonight primarily to give you an update of what we've been doing and to ask you for any input. We are in the process of actually writing a status report for the benefit of the selectmen, and before we finish finish the writing of that, we wanted to get your any concerns articulated by you that you think should be included in that report. To backtrack a little bit, Gary and I wanted to point out a little bit about the process of what's been happening over the past several months. We have amassed a lot of information. As you know, the short-term rental issue is a very complex issue. There are many competing interests. There are many legal opinions on the matter. And so we started out gathering public input, public opinion. We've had 2 public hearings. We have had delegations at every meeting. We've had extensive email. We've established a web page. We did that right from the beginning so that people could email us if they couldn't attend our public hearings or or delegations. As a group, we have delved into zoning regulations in town, zoning regulations in our 3 beach communities that have their own regulations, town ordinances, state law, assessors' practices. We've collaborated with our town attorney, Mark Zamarka. We've gotten input from our zoning official, fire marshal, police chief, and building official. We have read many academic articles, newspaper accounts of what's happening in other communities, particularly those in and around East Lyme. We've attended webinars, other meetings, and most importantly, we've kept up with the Wibby case. And I did provide you with the Supreme Court staff. This is a Connecticut case. This is their summary of the facts of the case and the question before the Supreme Court of Connecticut. So part of the reason why we're doing a status report for you is because this case is now pending before the Connecticut Supreme Court, and we believe it will be, and Attorney Zamarka also has concurred with this, we believe it'll be definitely determinative of certain issues concerning short-term rentals, regulations perhaps as to time limits, et cetera, et cetera. So we thought it would be, and the committee thought it would be a good idea, rather than pausing ourselves for a few months, that a status report would be the best thing to do. Because if we have to reconvene ourselves in a couple of months and we have studied all this information, we'll have to spend a month reviewing it. So better to kind of condense it into a status report. We benefit, you benefit from that. So the outline that Gary and I provided, there's 12 items that will be covered basically in that status report. They're pretty self-evident. Gary, did you want to go over some of them, or we can do it together? So starting with the Selectmen's charge, and the public can read this and also comprehend, because the public's input will be important all the way along, whether the town, regardless of the legal approach the town takes in the matter. But go ahead.
Sure. So basically we
I'll
wanted to...
let you get
Sure.
to
Basically we wanted to tell you that we exist and that we're actually doing things other than having a good time every Monday night, once a month. So we have done a lot of work. There's a lot of different positions on this, but it kind of comes down to, are we going to have short-term rentals? Are we not going to have short-term rentals? Are we going to regulate short-term rentals? Are we going to ban short-term rentals? And what it is that our community wants, because the globe is dealing with this. It's not just East Lyme, and short-term rentals seem to be good. They seem to be bad. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen in East Lyme and what we should do with that. So we do have information from our what's his name?
Attorney Zamarka.
No, the other guy, zoning reg guy,
Yes,
Mulholland.
Bill Mulholland.
Mr. Mulholland. He just never answers my email, so I forget his name. So Mr. Under the bus. So Mr. Mulholland did tell us that East Lyme laws right now don't allow for short-term rentals, but we have a history of doing that. So how do we mesh that all together? That's kind of our job, is to give you a recommendation about that. We have a lot of public opinion. We've analyzed the public opinion. There's clearly the couple of factions of groups out there: short-term rental owners They don't want us to eliminate them. They're agreeable to some regulation, not a lot of regulation. And we've heard from other people who, neighbors of these short-term rentals who, they really have some serious issues with noise and garbage and parking, which causes a lot of safety issues for emergency vehicles, and just the deterioration of the fabric of our community caused by transient people in these short-term rentals, which could be considered hotels as our neighbors. So these are issues that we have to deal with, you're going to have to deal with in the court in Whibby. We want to get some guidance from them to see how narrow their decision is going to be or how broad that decision might be. I'll probably disagree with everything they say, but that's why I'm not on the Supreme Court. So these are the things that we're doing, and we thought that a status report was a good idea. Many of you folks are new. We'll give you we'll keep it brief because we know you have a lot of work to do. But we do want to tell you what's going on so you can put it on the back burner as we continue to do our work, and at least you give it some thought in the next several months. I think that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, I think the labor of determining what's a best approach here is best broken up into segments, and this will be maybe your first segment, which is looking at a status report. We're thinking it's probably going to be 10 to 13 pages long. We're going to keep attachments to a minimum. There's a lot of information on our webpage. If you just want to start to become familiar with the topic, that's great. And item 12 if you look at item 12 in the outline, we'll list a couple of key reading resources for you, or webinars, so that you can get up to speed on the topic. Not that it's rocket science, but it is complicated, and this town's legal framework is particularly complicated. So we want to do the right thing. We want to avoid lawsuits if possible, and there are a lot of them out there. Against towns that have adopted certain restrictions and regulations. So, and the report we will send to you, the status report, will not be reviewed by attorneys and market, but a final report that we would write to you post Whibby's decision, the decision in Whibby, would be reviewed by council. So that gives you an idea of where we're headed. But and I have to say, it's been a very good group of people. We all have very different backgrounds and thoughts, and we've used our skill sets, I think, well to come up with quite a bit of consensus. But we're not ready, and we shouldn't really give you a final recommendation quite yet.
So we want to know, before we write this document, status report, if you folks have any questions, if there are any topics you want us to address, if we can include that in a status report. Anything?
Would Whibby be kind of like the flagship case going forward? Because it says, like you said, there's several cases going on.
Well, several cases, Ann, meant throughout the country.
Okay, so
there's a
this is
lot of
Connecticut.
litigation in Connecticut. That's the only case. That's the seminal case in Connecticut. It really hasn't been addressed before.
And I believe it will have some bearing on any regulation. The extent of that, it'll all depend on what the court decides. How broad the decision is. We're not at this point. It may take a very narrow decision, but it would be silly of us to offer some regulation to you to adopt, or for zoning to adopt, and then be told that's a no-go. So
I love that you have done this, and just to know, Jason, that this case that they're speaking of is right out of Branford, and it's very significant because it really does emulate, or mimic rather, our issues, our challenges. So it is interesting. I don't have any questions just because I've been part of and listening. I will tell you that every time I come in to give a report, I always say that you are all doing your due diligence and that it is very challenging with all of the different information that you're gathering together to try to find the right fit for East Lyme. So I will defer to all of you if you have questions moving forward.
You have to forgive me, I'm not a lawyer. I know you both are. Our board is stock lawyers, so perhaps this is a foolish question, but is there any chance that this could go to up the appellate system after a state court?
Whitby is Supreme Court in Connecticut, so that's the top court in Connecticut.
But
So
it's-
after that, it would just be Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court.
They have not addressed this issue.
Yeah.
I've researched it.
Yeah.
I've looked, I use Lexis, which researches all law. I haven't seen that they've addressed this issue.
Not yet, but maybe it's.
Not yet.
Right.
But
Yeah.
maybe there will be a case that gets, their review at some point.
So basically, Jason, when the Supreme Court in Connecticut decides this, that's probably gonna be it. They, unless.
That'll be the
that-
law.
yeah,
It'll
that would
set
be the law.
precedents.
Yeah,
There
Right,
are
it'll set
higher
precedents.
circuit courts,
Yeah.
correct?
That's in the
That's it.
federal.
Federal, yeah, and it
Listen.
won't, yeah, the likelihood of it going up is remote.
So Whitby was started in a zoning, they had a zoning decision, so really low-level zoning. Then it went to the Superior Court to review that zoning decision. Then it went to the appellate court. The appellate court made its decision. Now that's on appeal. And so we're just waiting. We think it'll be argued in the spring, looking for a decision late summer, maybe September, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, so it hasn't even been argued yet?
Has not been
Not
argued.
yet.
Briefs
Oh,
are
I
all
thought
in.
it was argued and we were just
Not
waiting for
yet.
the decision.
No,
Oh.
it may be
Oh,
argued
okay.
in March. That date hasn't been set. We check that from time to time.
Oh,
so
all right.
it
You can
hasn't.
track it if you want. I mean, you can
Yes,
track
you
it.
can-
yeah,
you
Bring
can
more
track it.
cases,
in real
see where
life,
it's
yeah,
at, and
for some
Right.
reason, yeah.
discovery orders. And
Right.
Yeah.
If you have any questions that, I mean, we're putting you on the spot now.
Right.
But if you do have any questions, there's a website, our emails are there.
Yes.
Shoot us an email.
And if you look at the outline and you see something that's missing, or something you're thinking about, just let us know. If you look at number 9, I just want to point out that this talks about the regulations and how it will be accomplished. This includes enforcement. Enforcement, as Candace was at our meeting where we discussed enforcement, that would be included, for example, in in section 9 of that paper. Yeah.
So can I just add, so
Yeah.
enforcement, and then of course the conversation of the infrastructure that's gotta, be put in place
Right.
in order to, enforce those things, right?
Right. That's correct. Yes.
There's so many caveats.
So I
Yeah,
guess,
go ahead.
so these 12, this is gonna be what you're gonna put in the status
Yes.
report? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and some of it's already been written. We're just trying to
Okay.
get some final thoughts from you or thoughts from you so that we don't miss something in the status report that you'd like to hear about.
Thank you.
The number 7 is something we have yet to determine. We're still surveying the officials, the zoning officers from the beach communities.
Yeah.
And that's kind of being done in one fell swoop, so, yeah.
Does there seem to be general consensus among the beach communities as to what they might like to see or be agreeable to seeing, or is it still very divisive?
I don't know that it's divisive, but there are definite patterns, and even in one beach community's zoning regulations, which is Black Point, not Old Black Point, the short-term rentals are expressly allowed in their zoning regulations, and have to be more than 7 days and beyond, which is interesting. So there are all these temporal
Yeah.
differences that we find. But, and in, I believe it's Oak Grove, which does not have its own zoning, but does have bylaws, which don't have the force of zoning, obviously. There is a stated preference, and it says preference or something like that, or recommendation,
yeah.
rather, that there be, again,
7 days.
7 days and beyond. And those track, historically, if you go back, those time limits basically track the traditional vacation rental in beach communities. So what's happened with short-term rentals, in a word, is just it's something old in a way that's been reinvented because of the internet, because of economic pressures, because
Yes.
of the pandemic, changes in preferences of travelers. So, but now municipalities are truly struggling because states usually don't want to deal with it. That we do have in Connecticut a state occupancy tax. That's about all we have. Plus, obviously, if you declare your income tax. But there's no state overarching, regulation, if you will.
So we do not have a registration system in town for these, so we really
Correct.
don't know how many short-term rentals exist.
Well, we actually do, but we do because we did an informal, Greg McIntyre on our committee did an informal check on the internet, and he was pretty accurate, because then we were able to have a complimentary from this company Granicus, which is well-known municipal, oriented company dealing with land use and other related issues. They did a complimentary assessment of East Lyme's short-term rentals, which appear on the internet listings. So those numbers are very similar. There are a certain number of listings, certain numbers of actual rentals, and the percentage from year to year, from 23 to 24, it's going up 15%. So it's happening. And it's growing. So we know that for sure.
It is growing,
Yeah.
and it's also changing how it looks. So the model of using the third party is now starting to be looked at as, well, I think I'll do it by myself, right? Because if I can rent it on I can do it by myself. I don't have to pay that third party. So essentially, yes, I think that that calculation was probably right on
Right.
for what is on the internet and
Right.
identifiable.
Right.
But the truth is, I think there's a whole lot more.
Yes.
I do. I think
Yeah,
there's a whole
it's
lot
hard,
more.
it's going to be hard to capture
Yes.
the word of mouth rentals. Sometimes they start off on platforms such as Airbnb, Vrbo, and there are hundreds of
There are.
platforms
Yes.
now. I mean, I'm thinking maybe 20. No, it's I was surprised to learn myself that it was hundreds of them. So sometimes a homeowner will start that way, and then there might be repeat customers, and it's
Right.
word of mouth. Yeah.
It's the same model largely that, on a smaller scale, of course, but whether it be like a large yacht or a corporate jet, I mean, you can own it, and the rental, you're renting it out, you can totally pay for the use of it. And they're adopting that model now to vacation homes.
Yes.
So with the advent of the internet, it's just created this other whole issue. Like you say, it was, in many areas, it was a 7-day work week, and you'd rent that cottage for the week.
Right,
And
right.
it's changed the whole picture.
Definitely.
I'm really impressed with your committee and how much work you've done.
Yes.
And I think it's terrific that you have such a sort of a cross-section of different points of view, and which really is essential for the
The outcome.
the outcome,
The outcome.
and people respecting the outcome.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
I don't really have myself any suggestions, and I really think I would rather say nothing and just, not to try to put my thumb down on any particular area. I'm just very interested to see what you come up with, and you're really on a great track, I think. This is very interesting,
Yeah. Thank you.
these
Thanks.
topics.
Just to address Ann's question,
Yeah.
Roseanne's question, with respect to the beach community's positions, that's one thing that we're kind of lacking. So that's why we're trying to delay this process a bit, so we can get more information from the beach community presidents, whatever little government they have, so that we can get their input as to how they want to operate their own communities.
We've had public input from members of the beach community on both sides of the issue. What we haven't been able to tap into are some of the officials, or the government officials within those beach communities that have them, or zoning officers. Yeah.
So, that kind of piggybacks on my question. So you have the beach communities, right? And then you have people who are complaining about noise, garbage, parking, right? So wouldn't these people go to their boards and say, hey, look, there's people here who are short-term renters who are, we're having issues now with, parking, garbage, noise. What are you going to do about it, kind of thing? Have you heard anything like that? Because I know, you sounds like you're getting complaints, but I would think that they would go first to that board, that of their little community, beach community.
Go ahead.
We've heard some issues that there's some confusion. People will call the police because there's parking problems. The police go, and it's like, well, it's not my jurisdiction. So it's kind of, there seems to be some confusion about that. Other communities, they've told us, oh, we don't have anyone to enforce this. We have the laws, it's written on paper, but we don't have anyone to enforce it. Or we're now in the process of hiring people, maybe that they'll do that. So it's kind of, it's developing.
It's developing. It's
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag.
Right.
Black Point, for example, not Old Black Point, but Black Point, there doesn't seem to be complaints in the same way that you have in other of the beach communities. They're the ones with the zoning regulation in place, which is interesting to me. Yeah, and zoning officials recently hired, that was one. And they're, the police are often the first to be called, which is understandable. And you'll read more about ordinances in town which can apply. We don't. There are the good news of all this. If I can give you a sneak preview, is that we can apply certain law that we do have already concerning noise ordinance, parking ordinance, and even some practices in the assessor's office can perhaps help us. So those are good things, But yeah, as far as what's happening in each and every beach community, very different. One beach community, for example, has a restrictive covenant, not allowing, something that runs with the land. So that's a whole different thing, but doesn't mean it doesn't happen. But there are complaints within, and we've heard some of them through the public.
Offhand, do you happen to know how many different zoning districts there are in East Lyme?
Yes, there's 3 other, the town has its own,
Right.
and then there's 3. There's Black Point, Crescent Beach, and Giant's Neck.
Giants Neck.
Those 3 have their
Giant's
own
Neck.
zoning, yes. And only one of them has specifically addressed short-term rentals. And also that same beach community, Black Point, has recently updated all of their zoning. So that's about as current as you're going to get.
Right.
So that's good.
Old Black Point, that's subject to East Lyme? They don't have
Yes,
their own zoning?
they, there's a general I was speaking to someone who lives there just this weekend, and she was saying that basically the feeling is it doesn't happen here, but it does happen there. So they're going to have to, be treated as the rest of town.
Yeah.
Because they don't have
Right.
their own. They may
They
have
don't have-
bylaws that help certain things, but that's that.
Yeah.
Have you found any communities that have actually prescribed the definition of short-term rental, whether it's, 3 days, a week?
Well, there is the state definition, which is in the, in our basically in our income tax code and for taxing hotels, motels, occupancy tax, and it is 30 days, under 30 days, 30 days and under. Yeah.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead.
It's actually 90 days in that statute,
Yes.
but they only tax you on the first 30 days.
Yeah.
So it's 90 days, but
Yeah.
really 30 days. So.
Right. But there is a clear definition of what is a short-term rental within our state statute. And that's something that you'll see in the report, for sure. But there are varying definitions, as you can see, and and then this will be a central issue in this Wibby case, because the appellate court really just put the kibosh kind of on temporal limitations. It's pretty dramatic a decision. I think something's going to happen at the Supreme Court level. I really do. And I've spoken to a couple of land use attorneys about it, and in addition to attorneys in Marco.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Both of you, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Are you going to be, in your recommendations, are you going to be recommending teeth too? Meaning like, I recommend you put this in, this in, this and this and this and whatever. And also, who's going to be in charge of biting? Who should be in charge? The local zoning, where I live in Black Point. And there's a lot more complaints than you hear. Just don't want to be that guy. You just don't want to be that guy. I'm just telling you. But this past snowstorm brought, how many people can live in a house? this past snowstorm brought extra cars parked in the road, blocking snow, blocking plowing, blocking
Okay.
mail service. And it was like, somebody came to me and said, hey, what are you gonna do? We have a committee for that. And so, but I'm just gonna say, if you wanna know if it's gonna work, it's gotta have teeth, it's gotta work. And if you don't believe me, ask how the golf carts are going in Black Point.
Yes.
It's non-regulated. You may say it's regulated, you can't do this, but it's not regulated.
Well, yes, I mean, Granicus, which has been giving us some information, told us that under 10% of short-term rental owners comply with registering. When
Even
there's a-
registering.
Even
Good,
registering.
good to know that, so.
And
yeah.
so it's a definite uphill battle. So whatever you do adopt has to be,
Yeah, can you
pretty
lose your
streamlined.
right to short-term rental because you
Can
keep
you-
violating the rules?
yeah,
You know,
How do you
so
enforce things? But-
it's a key
So
issue.
let's
but-
not put the cart before the
Yes,
horse. So
yes.
let's see what
Okay.
what you come up with,
Right.
and see what the court does.
Good job.
Right.
Yeah, great
Well,
job.
thanks, thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, go
Just
ahead.
ask one more question. So you said under 10% of short-term rentals register. So does that mean then they wouldn't be taxed if they're not registering? Like, is that what the point of registering is to be taxed? Or how does the
No.
tax come into it? Because I just saw something here about
So, yeah, the
taxes is allowed
taxes,
businesses.
yeah, the taxes would come into play either at the state level where you are paying, taxes on the income that you generate as a property renter or owner renting property. And then within the town, the assessor's office, can, it hasn't really necessarily happened to date, but, this personal property within these short-term rentals, the furniture, et cetera, that should really be taxed if we treat them as businesses. So but the registration itself is in its own universe. It doesn't connect to those things. It's more keeping track of what you have in town, and it's usually connected to inspections, if inspections are done as part of a regulation.
So East Lyme doesn't tax their short-term
So-
rentals as part.
There's a state tax for people who do short-term rentals. They have to pay the state, I think it's a 15% tax on any money they make, so that's a taxing issue. We can't forget that East Lyme is in an enviable position because we have current laws where we can control this situation. According to Mulholland, our zoning laws do not allow short-term rentals. We also have in our home occupation statute laws in East Lyme that there are no tourist homes allowed. So all of these other communities that don't have these kind of laws, they're scrambling and they're trying to create regulations. And what we're seeing, many of these regulations are starting lawsuits because people don't want their properties regulated. They don't want their right. They say, "Oh, I have a right to rent for any period of time." So they're interpreting any regulation as stepping on their freedom to own property. East Lyme can do nothing. We don't have to do any laws, and we can still say you're not allowed, and we can enforce that. So we're in a good situation right now because whoever made the laws prior to you folks didn't allow it. So we have a history of people doing it. Apparently they all violated that law, but it didn't cause a lot of problems, I think. So we're in a good situation. But if we start to regulate, we're going to get lawsuits because people have come to the meetings with attorneys and said people who regulate they followed up with lawsuits. So regulations are
It's
gonna
high
cause
stakes,
trouble.
I think.
It's high stakes.
It is, yeah.
It is.
Sounds like a simple little issue, but the more you dig, it's more and more trouble.
Right. Well, thank you.
But
Thanks for your
appreciate
time.
you
Thank
spending all
you.
the time and effort, but I know
You're
this is a
welcome.
huge
Thank
undertaking.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
both
you.
very, very
Appreciate it.
much.
Okay, so let's see, where are we here? Very interesting. All right, we're now on to old business, and we're going to discuss the possible action, adopt the revised police commission ordinance. So, let's start with a motion, and then we'll have discussion.
All right, move the following. Resolve to enact the revisions to the ordinance entitled Board of Police Commissioners presented at the public hearing before the Board of Selectmen on February 21st, 2024. The effective date of the ordinance shall be 10 days after newspaper publication of the notice of its adoption.
And so, and do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, so, just to kind of go back a little bit, this was to allow appointments of commissioners and get, they could be reappointed again, and again, I suppose, without term limits. So the statute removes the term limit feature. Any discussion? Any additional?
I just have one question. For the members of the Board of Police Commissioners, is there any like particular political affiliations or minority representation on this board?
Yeah, all boards and commissions.
It must be.
Because I just didn't see, I mean, I read through it, I didn't see it, but I didn't know if that was just something that's done and it's just not something that needs to be
I mean, it's
detailed.
another commission, and I would think it has to adhere to the same
State statute.
Yeah, so I think that's true.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you thinking that that hasn't been followed?
No, I wasn't thinking,
Okay.
either way, I just, I just wasn't sure because it just said 7 resident electors, so I just was kind of wondering if that was something that needed to be, either specified or something that needed to be adhered to when they were put on the board.
It's, I mean, everything else is the same in the ordinance, it's just whether or not we can reappoint someone for
Yeah.
more than one term. So, and as with any commission, it has to adhere to the charter.
Minority. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So it seems like the philosophical divide here would be accountability of public officials, and by revising this, one could argue that we lose a certain amount of accountability, a mechanism for making sure that there is no centralized control of one commission. This is an era where people expect a lot out of politicians and out of police officers, so this move, I mean, is bound to create some kind of friction. However, members of the police commission themselves have come before us and said that this is a necessary tool for keeping brain drain from happening. And I'm obliged to believe them. I have not sat on that commission, and no one has said otherwise to me. So I would speak in favor of this, even considering the current climate of increased accountability for elected officials and police officers.
We do have someone from the commission here this evening. don't
We do.
Regina?
Would you like to speak to it, Regina, since you're a member of the commission?
Sure. The problem, I think, is that
Yeah, if you would just, yeah.
the Regina Hitchery. The problem that the commission was facing is that the way the terms had been done, they were restricted to 2 terms, which meant that any of the current, the past commissioners, at most they would have served 7 years, because the first terms weren't a full 4-year just because of the way it worked, and then there was a 4-year. And some other people were 6 years. And as we went into this year, we were automatically going to lose 4 people. And that we were limited then, you couldn't reappoint beyond the 2 terms, and we're not aware of any other commission in town that works that way. So it was losing certainly a lot of knowledge. I wasn't one of the original first or 3-year or 2-year or 4-year terms, but you were losing all that institutional knowledge who helped to form it, create the commission as you would with any other commission. So that was the issue that seemed like, wait, what happened here? And how do you remedy that? So that, I think, was the simplest way, from what I understood, is just eliminate the fact that you couldn't reappoint people, so that you can hold on to it. Obviously, still up to the selectmen to decide who should be on it, and the appointments, as usual, to see that you have a fair oversight of yes, Selectman Diebel, of something that's very important, the police department, and how we are policed as a community.
Thank you for speaking.
Yeah, and I think, the institutional knowledge of the commission, that's very important. And again, we have the autonomy here to not reappoint somebody if we have concerns, and we're not creating a dynasty, and they're not there in perpetuity. So, I think the other concern was when we're forming our own police department, our own police commission, and I think the town was really finding its way in that area. And there were concerns initially, what if we get, some people that we're not happy with or problematic, we don't want them to keep being reappointed, and there were those concerns, but everything is worked out very well, and I think everyone's satisfied with how the commission is functioning and how well the police department is doing, and so maybe those initial concerns are overemphasized.
Sure. Okay.
And what is done can be undone. I mean, if we need to revisit this issue,
Yeah.
That's true.
It's not a Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's
No,
right.
that's
Yeah,
important.
it is.
That's right.
You can talk amongst yourselves like, Bill Bob, it's time. You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's good.
Yeah, no, and there will be some who won't want to be
Right.
reelected. I've done a term, I'm ready to go off, or I'll do a half a term,
Right.
I'll be back to
It's a-
resign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger.
You comfortable with this?
I am. I think it's
Very good.
a good way, and from at least my experience on the commission, the people really are there about how do you serve the people of East Lyme. It's very apolitical, and a good communication with the chief and with the department.
Yes. Thank you so much
Glad
for
you're on
speaking
board.
to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
serving on that committee. I know it's a lot.
Jason, nice job.
Excuse me, please.
Any further comments, or? All right, well then, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Being none, it's resolved. And then what, it goes into effect, what, 10 days, is that right? Did it become effective?
Does that become an ordinance now?
After it goes in the newspaper, so that gets published. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. And we have the next one.
All right, move the following. Resolve to enact revisions to the ordinance entitled, quote, peddling, presented at the public hearing before the Board of Selectmen on February 21st, 2024. The effective date of the ordinance shall be 10 days after newspaper publication of the notice of its adoption.
Okay. All right, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I hear a second. Let's open it for discussion.
I'll share with you that I think you're going to need a pushback from the police department. This on the peddling ordinance, correct?
This is the peddling ordinance,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, they feel that maybe the town hall should handle that. And one of the pushbacks was that the police would be doing the backgrounds. Well, I got a note saying that Lieutenant says that the town has their own background attorney they use for hiring, and it's already in place. They think that kind of thing should be town record, not strictly the police. So that's the department itself. You're the boss, and you can have them do it, but they think that kind of thing should go through the town as far as a permit or something like that. That internally, that's the pushback I got because I have friends down there. So.
Yep. I appreciate your candor. And
Yeah.
So now, would that be because of liability, or would that be because of the time-consuming part of it, or?
Not liability, time consuming.
Time-consuming.
And record keeping and the clientele,
I see, okay.
and I would love to see a reception area at the front of that admin building. You know what I'm saying? So you can, rather than walk into a blank walls, whatever. But just because I spent some time down there. But I can see the resistance,
Yep.
and also can see why you want to delegate that to happen too. So, but there will be a resistance to, like, you know.
In any decision, there's always going to be pros and cons, and
I just want to make you aware.
no, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Tom.
yeah.
You know, that's what we're here for, to be
Yep.
honest with one another, and I mean, it seemed to me that
I mean, what would be wrong with having Mrs. Galbo's office handle it?
Well, that's the way that it's been done, right?
it's been, I don't know if no one has approached me directly as first selectman,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't, I know exactly who in this building is doing it.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe that Karen Galbo is doing it, but I haven't.
No, I think, you know, I think Deb,
Yeah,
I
who is
think,
it?
Debbie Lewandowski.
Correct.
do
Oh,
it,
okay.
And probably Kathy Miller assists with that, but it's been, Leanne would be doing it.
So, I mean, they have access to files and databases and things that we just simply wouldn't have here, and they have a facility with doing backgrounds that I don't think we're as well equipped to do.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it an extra cost to our police department? Is it a cost to their budget? There is. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, you know, anytime any employee is taxed with a task, uses up their time, and
Right,
I
so-
suppose eventually it ends up costing the town more, but, you know, many things kind of get absorbed into.
So do they have the manpower, do they have the time, and do they have the money to do it?
I think the change in priority at that building can be instantaneous. Okay, as far as, and also somebody might be waiting out in the lobby where nobody else could help them or do something with them, and they'll get pissed off or whatever. And I just think that the priority and the levels of priorities can happen. Sometimes nothing, you know, the old coffee and donut thing, waiting for something to happen, or I'm working on another case, or versus here we have admin people to do admin stuff. But we have now too. But Deb used to do it before. And so I'm not going to get into that, but just,
Yeah.
I guess,
Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
it's not that big a deal to me.
Is this something that people adhere to? Do people come in and say, look, I need to get a permit for peddling?
I mean, there's regulations, and, you know.
No, I know there are, but do people actually do it then? That's kind of what
Yeah, I think they do.
They
I
do.
mean, like, you know, during the parade, you've got people selling
Well, that was
balloons and
that was
toys.
my question exactly.
But it's not just limited, it's like ice cream, right? I mean, and
Correct.
vendor
Anything like
license,
that,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, any kind of long-term license where he goes through housing with ice cream trucks and things like that too. And if they don't, now you can get the police involved with saying, hey, you know, whatever.
They didn't get pinched.
Correct. It's adhered to.
Okay, it is, okay.
I just have one more question.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what other towns do? How they have a model? What do they do? Do they run it through their town hall, or do they go through their police department?
My
Or do we know
understanding is it's done both ways. Some towns do have the first selectman's office, others have the police do it.
I see, okay.
In the education world, a teacher cannot come to a public forum like this and speak about what they do without opening themselves up to, I don't want to use the word retribution, but discipline from their school district. I'm wondering, does such a thing exist for police officers? And if we really wanted to know how police officers felt about this, is there a mechanism to allow them to come speak on this? Because I noticed Don has someone that he knows, and I would not ask him to divulge his sources or anything,
Of course.
but as a matter of public record, it would be nice to hear how do officers feel about this.
I think we have bigger fish to fry. Just regarding this issue. I mean, they would prefer to deflect it, but naturally they'll follow your instruction.
Well, do we, I mean, I don't have a sense of what the volume is for,
Well, that's what I was gonna ask.
Sandy, do you have a sense of that at all? Of what the
I
volume?
only see the vendor permits that you sign off on for,
Yeah.
okay, so I've seen them for the solar companies, which some point start to slow down, and then for the summertime vending.
Yeah.
That's it.
Let me ask this.
Things like that.
When we have our big dock event, a big dock party, we have to have a mass gathering permit. We have to have a tent permit. Where do we go for those?
I believe that's park and rec.
Yeah.
Really?
It is,
I
yeah.
think we came to town hall, so it's the park and rec out of here.
No, they're
They're at the
down.
community center.
Community center.
And then we have the fire marshal come by and he has to inspect and sign off on the permit.
The government.
That's separate.
That's separate, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
That
mean,
tent
I-
might be fire marshal too.
what?
I think that tent might be fire marshal too, if I'm not mistaken.
I would
right?
think so.
Yeah,
I think it's
Yeah.
fire marshal
yeah,
too.
maybe.
Should be if it isn't. I mean, I guess my feeling, and the reason I was in favor of this change was that it, you know, who in this building would I task with doing a background search and that responsibility? And is there someone that really has any experience here in doing an adequate job? And the last thing I want to have happen is we get someone out there selling, you know, whatever they're selling, and young people, and it might be someone that maybe we really don't want in that role, and having it, you know, a reason to talk to young kids without an adequate.
And you don't have to
background.
change either because it's being done at the police station now.
Yeah, so they you know, they have access, you know, they know how to immediately search, you know, the databases for sex offenders and all the other things. I don't want to miss that. I don't want that to be on my watch. And we have someone out there selling balloons to little kids, and it's someone that shouldn't be out there doing that.
You're saying we have the tools,
We
why
have-
not utilize them?
That's right. And, you know,
I agree.
we have the building, we have the staff, and, you know, we don't nickel and dime them too much on their budget. And I think this is something we're asking them to do. They're really the best equipped entity in town to do it. So that's,
Well, just, and also just additionally, I mean, with the school district, you know, anybody that's gonna be volunteering, they go through the process and they go through our police department. So, and that, and, you know, that kind of coordinates with what I guess we're asking. So I may be going down the line if there is an issue with time restraints or not having, you know, maybe it's going to be so overwhelming, you know, that if that's the case and they were to come to us and they need, exactly, you know.
I don't think the volume is that great, but it's really having the ability, the tools to do
Sure,
the
to
job
do
right.
it effectively and efficiently.
Yeah.
Sure,
I agree.
I agree.
You know, you don't ask an electrician to frame up your house. You know,
Agreed.
a framer to do it.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah. So, any need for further discussion? Has everyone had an opportunity really to express how they feel? I don't, and I'm not trying to steer this, I'm just trying to. Okay. Okay. All right.
I think really that the police has, as you said, has access to information
Right.
that I don't think is general public knowledge.
That's true.
Police records, previous offenses, I just don't see that I don't think we have access to those files.
You do.
We do?
Yes. You
Some.
use the same background company as they do down there.
Yeah, we have some of it, but not, but then you're relying on someone that isn't trained.
No,
Yeah.
you're on track.
So I just think as a matter of safety and, you know.
Keep it
I'm trying
as
to-
is.
I want to protect everybody I can in this town the best way I can, and I just think this is the right way, at least on this issue. So,
Well, I mean, could we also be having a problem if, let's say, you have somebody who, a peddler comes into the town hall, they do the check, it's not maybe thorough enough, something
Right.
happens,
there you
and
go.
then,
Oh, sure.
you know, the town is the, you know, the deep pocket.
That's
Oh, the
right.
liability, oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's,
Absolutely.
so,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I mean, I think going through the police, we've done the best that we can. You know, it's not a perfect world, but for the resources we have, that's the best that we could do and our best option.
Sold.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had somebody, just as an aside, come to my house, and I was home by myself, it was two guys, and they're like, oh, your neighbor said you're very friendly, and I was like, okay, and then he's like, well, aren't you gonna open your door? And I was like, no, and he started yelling, swearing at me, and walked off, you know.
It's
Oh,
very
yeah, and I was
disturbing,
very upset, I was like, you know, and then we went to the next house, so, you know, put something out whatever, Facebook, it was like, you know,
Yeah.
watch out, but,
There's
you
a
know,
lot of-
so, yeah, I think it's something that should be
So you are very nice.
connected. I don't know if you're the direction of people, I don't know.
So, yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, it's a dangerous world. We have to be as cautious as we can, and it's practicable, and I think this fits in with that.
I didn't happen to see this in the ordinance, but does this also prohibit religious organizations from approaching you at home?
I don't know if it really speaks to that. I mean, we're really limiting this to getting a
It's-
vendor license.
It says, Roseanne, it says the word peddling shall not include solicitation, well, of funds by any charitable organization.
So you can't
So
limit,
if it's,
Are you under 112.02 limitations?
no, I was under 112.01, let me see, hang on.
In their hands. Have you had that?
No, I'm not in the right
That's an
section.
extra state statute.
but I think that goes beyond our purview for this
Yeah.
specific issue. I mean, we're not reviewing the entire statute and how it works. It's just that
Yeah,
what entity is going to,
exactly.
you know, if you are in the place where you need a peddling license, who's going to do the background?
Yeah,
And
Make
I
a
don't
motion.
think charitable organizations are required to get a peddling license.
yeah.
But,
I don't
but
think
that
so.
goes beyond what
Yeah.
the scope of our discussion, I believe. Then, unless there's any further discussion, I'll ask for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed? The motion carries. All right, getting towards the end of our agenda, to everyone's disappointment. Fishing dock leases, are we going to table that one, or do we have?
Well, Doug and I toured the facility and we talked about one of the leases.
Okay.
Not much.
I'm just waiting for you were gonna hook me up with the attorney.
Oh, okay, so let's get to that.
And then we can almost basically cut and paste the lease. I'll give the numbers,
Great.
and then we'll add the ordinance about the transfer of fuel.
Let's get together next week and we'll button it up and I'll put you in touch and.
Okay.
Yeah, let them know. Very good. Perfect. All right, ex officio reports. Do we have, Ann, or rather,
Let's
Roseanne?
have silence on this.
Hmm?
Let's have silence on this.
Well, do
We've
it.
been here since 5:15.
Okay.
Dan, I have some.
All right.
Okay, so I've had the Youth, Family, and Human Services Commission on February 8th, and they welcomed Lisa, who is their new person sitting in on the commission, and also, I believe it's Kim Reith, who is representing Salem. They went over the community outreach and programs that they've started with, which is a girls' circle for 9 weeks. They went over the internship from Southern. They also went over a peer-to-peer intervention presentation that they had, which was really good. Screenagers, which was another well-attended, like a movie night. And they're just doing great things. Second thing was, same night, was the town of East Lyme, the Park and Recreation. And that was the kind of budget. They went over the parking passes and prices, and kind of where they want to end up there. And there was a very large attendance for a dog park. So I think we'll be hearing more. The want for a dog park. So that is in motion. So I know that Rob Tukey is kind of taking that on. I know that Sue Como, is it Como or Como? Hoping I'm saying that correctly.
So,
Yes. Yes. So she's helping with that as well. So I'm sure that we'll be hearing some more about that. And let's see, just one more push. Let's see, we've got dinner with 5 churches by the bay coming up to benefit the Brookside on the 29th, and that's from 4 to 8. And you can get tickets online, you can call, and you can pay at the door, I was told. So I hope to see people down there.
thank you. Anyone else have a report, though? All right. Being none, then I do have, oh, did you say that?
No,
Oh,
I'm
you're
good.
good? Okay. Then we'll move to the first selectmen's report. And so I do have some news tonight. I'm happy to report that we closed on the Hathaway Farms, Ossawatchie Hills, and Brainerd Road properties. The town of East Lyme now owns those 3 properties. It's been several years in getting this accomplished, but we now own it. The next phase will be to place a conservation easements on those properties. And without going into the technicalities of conservation easements, it is a process, but that will happen. That is the goal. And once they attach to the property, it runs with the land. No one will ever be able to build on those properties, and it'll be there for our children and grandchildren to use and hike and do those things. Long after my picture is on the wall, back in the road, that land will be protected by those easements and ownership. I would be remiss if I didn't thank everyone that was involved in getting to this point, not the least of which was Attorney Mark Block and Amanda Sicily. They were instrumental in making this happen and guiding me through this process. I think everybody is very happy that it's completed. I think the people that sold it to us are happy. We're happy that it's done. So that's my report on that. And so there we go. One other thing, we hired a human resources manager, Stacy Konakowitz, and we're very happy to have her here at the town, and we welcome her, and we're looking forward to her managing our human resources department and making improvements in that area, which is very important, and it's a real step up for the town to have someone of her caliber on board. And then I also want to announce tonight another initiative that I've been working towards with the help of Kevin Gervais, and we, you know, as you notice in your budget books, there is East Lyme Fire Services section now, and I am going to be appointing an interim temporary fire chief and temporary assistant fire chief, or acting is the right term, and we will look forward to reviewing the ordinance that was we considered several months ago, and I'm trying to be inclusive of all the players in the fire department, the union people, the existing volunteer fire chiefs at the Niantic Fire Department and Flanders Fire Department. I'm trying to bring everything together. Hopefully this will improve morale in the fire department. It'll improve management structure. It's something that's long overdue, and I'm taking it on. I'm trying to make this happen, and it's consistent with the fire study that we have done, I believe, in 2018. So I'm trying to bring some of the suggestions and changes to fruition, and so that'll be the next area that we put a lot of effort into making that happen. So that's my report tonight. Some good things to talk about, and that's it for me. We don't have any communications.
May I ask a
Yes.
question?
Yes, of
So
course.
on this initiative, will you be working solely on your own, or you'll be looking for input or representation from the board, or how is it going to look? Are you going to do an ad hoc committee? Are you going to create some sort of commission for conversation?
For the fire service.
Yeah.
So, so the initial step is to organize it so, you know, we're moving budget items around so that we have someone at the top of the pyramid. We have paid town firefighters
Yep.
that don't have a fire chief.
Right.
And so that needs to change. Right now, I'm the administrative fire chief.
Right.
And that's not a role that really I think I should have.
Agreed.
Huh?
Agreed.
I mean, you don't want me showing up with my Honda if you got a little, you know, you got a little smoke coming out of the windows. You don't want me showing up with my, you know, you want the guys with the trucks and that know what they're doing. And, you know, we have an excellent fire department, and we have, you know, a lot to be proud of with those guys. And so there has to be chains of command. It has to be done correctly. You know, maybe at some point we think about a fire commission model like we have for the police. But the first initial step is at least for the purposes of the budget, to have an acting fire chief and an acting assistant chief. And then we will, once we start talking about an ordinance, we'll bring it before the Board of Selectmen, and then so we all have input as to what that looks like and how that should be.
Okay,
So
so
this is
just
an
one more
interim
question.
step.
So the model, this is kind of what I'm getting to. What I would love to see is stakeholders, all stakeholders that are going to have input. What I don't want to see is not a lot of stakeholders and certain people having conversations, and then it's coming to the Board of Selectmen for our review, and then we're going to vote on something. I just want to make sure that the way that it's being navigated is fully transparent.
Yep.
All stakeholders are at the table, having conversations, public conversations. I just don't want any surprises. Like
Well,
kind of the last time it was like, ooh, surprise, here comes an ordinance. Now we're going to vote on it.
Right.
And it had a terrible look and it was real stinky. So I just don't want to have anything like that.
Well,
So-
and that's why we're doing it this way. That's
Okay.
why I'm using this discussion as a vehicle to inform the Board of Selectmen, my thinking, and now it's out there, it's public.
Yep.
Before we've made, before we've passed out a proposed ordinance, I want the feedback from what I'm doing tonight. So I'm trying to take this in baby steps, so we get feedback, and then everybody that has a stake in it has an opportunity to talk to me about it, to talk to this board about it, to address the board. So I'm trying to do it in the most transparent way possible. I've talked to some of the union people in the fire department. They knew this was coming. And actually, the first clue was the budget book itself,
Yeah.
where it's in the fire service. So not trying to hide anything, trying to bring this out in a way that will get feedback, and hopefully that'll improve morale. People will hopefully support it. And I'm trying to do it in baby steps. So
Very good.
that's it.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, of course. So that's my report for tonight. Do I hear, there's no selectmen's response, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
We have comments from the
Public comment.
Public comment, I'm sorry. Is there any public comment?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Being done, then there's no selectmen's response. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the regular meeting of February 21st, 2024 at 8:44 p.m.
Second.
Oh, good, we got a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Jeannie, you got 1 second? I'll see you after.
Now let's get everybody to